agriculture co-ops under the Department of Agriculture. That too, structural reforms so that matututukan ng DA yung mga kooperatiba ng ating mga farmers at fisherfolk. So yung regulatory function will be with the CDA, but the development interventions should be with the Department of Agriculture. But I have several other questions in that regard, but I'd just like to move quickly to the problem of what the problem created by the policy of the BSP in the banking system when it issued the memorandum circular limiting cash transactions withdrawals to 500,000. And this was done September during the hearings of the Blue Ribbon Committee. Circular number 1218. And I've been receiving a lot of complaints that a lot of depositors, small businesses are saying suddenly it's so difficult to transact with the banks because there is a limit of 500,000 pesos per day. What happens to payroll? What happens to et cetera, et cetera? Is this not a knee-jerk response by the BSP? Are they willing to reconsider it?
Mr. President, personally, definitely this is a knee-jerk reaction. Senator Pangilinan was the one who brought it up during the Blue Ribbon hearing na napakadaling mag-withdraw ng 500 million in cash.
Yes.
Two tranches.
Two tranches.
So that's 1 billion in cash ng isang maliit na branch ng Land Bank sa Bulacan. So na walang report, no? Na hindi na report sa AMLAC, na wala pong nakakaalam. And because of that incident and because of your comment on that, the BSP reacted by coming up with a policy that the maximum cash withdrawal is 500,000. No?
Yes.
Kaso lang nga, marami tayong lalo na mga MSMEs ang nahihirapan ho dito. So,
just a clarification, this 500,000 is across all banks, no? Whether government or private?
yes, all banks, Mr. President. And I was made to understand po by BSP that pwede nun para lumaki basta may supporting documents. No? But then again, I guess as a general rule, everything is 500,000. But I understand that they are reviewing this policy because of a lot of negative comments that they are receiving. And
could it have been a contributory factor in the drop in economic transactions? And therefore, baka sana 4.2% ang growth natin noong third quarter, naging 4 kasi nga ang hirap mag-transact sa mga bangko. I don't know, no? I'm just thinking off the top of my head.
Yeah, I think Senator Rector's made possible. This is possible. And also moving forward, it can also create some negative effects, Mr. President. And the BSP is the BSP acknowledged this, Mr. President, and they are now reviewing this policy. So,
yes, thank you. And you mentioned the land bank, and I remember this because there seemed to be a conflict between the BSP appreciation of what was happening and the land bank's appreciation of what was happening. Because the land bank, a few days after we cited these concerns, well, first the BSP. The BSP, if I may quote, the BSP said, BSP shocked by cash piles in flood control corruption. No? This is a Philippine Star. It was worse than we thought. I'm quoting the governor, Eli. This flood control scandal was much of a shock to us as it was to you, but we're working hard to fix it. So that's the BSP concern. But the land bank, when was it? September 30 issued a statement saying that all their transactions with the DPWH were above board as we were investigating it. So, which is which? Is it shocking or is it above board? May we have a clarification, Mr. President?
Well, Mr. President, it's both they acknowledge both statements. First, they were shocked because, like you have exposed, it's easy to withdraw 500 million pesos in cash in a matter of, and another 500 million pesos in cash in a matter of days. No? So, but based on their policy, this is within their policy, Mr. President. Albeit, and I also acknowledge that this policy is not a very well thought of policy, meaning you can just withdraw 500 million easily, just like that. That's why they reviewed that policy and changed it, Mr. President. But what's also very peculiar, Mr. President, is this type of transaction should be reported to AMLAC. And should be flagged as suspicious transaction. And I understand that the reporting mechanism happens in a matter of a few days or almost instantly. But obviously, the AMLAC did not respond or investigated this
well,
amount.
I have to check, no? But my understanding was they did not report it as a suspicious transaction because it is a covered transaction.
It's a covered transaction,
But not
Mr.
a
President.
suspicious transaction.
Yeah, Mr. President, but I think both covered...
And I was lectured by somebody from Land Bank online, posted saying that I should know the difference between, said the difference between covered and suspicious. Just for the record, I was sponsor of the AMLA law in 2001, so I very well know the difference between covered and suspicious transactions.
Mr. President, I was made to understand that because
that when you make a testimony or you come up with, testimony, for it to be believable or credible, it has to be consistent with human experience. Of course, it's not exactly four square behind that release of 457 million in two tranches. But as a banker, and I've asked all maybe 5 to 6 bankers, and I said, would you consider this as a regular? The release of 457 million pesos cash in two transactions within a period of 2 days? And none of them said, oh, that's okay. All of them said, wait. And then, but you have Land Bank saying everything was above board, etc., etc. But at least, eventually, there were some intermediaries who relayed to me that they're reviewing their current position. And then I said, okay, thank you. But because my concern was precisely, you mean to say if that was above board, then we will have more 457 million cash transactions in the future, and it's still okay. So moving forward, I hope that matter is clarified, and also the 500,000 pesos cash perhaps should be revisited. maybe 2 more minutes of questions. We go back to the...
Yes, Mr. President. Well, just to
Yes.
as a feedback, the Secretary of Finance is the ex officio chairman of the Land Bank, and he's here, and he committed
That's why I'm
to
raising it.
That's why he committed to review this policy and make sure that the bank will not be used as a conduit for corruption, Mr. President. So
Thank you.
we will
Thank
look
you
at
for that
policy.
reassurance and the manifestation as expressed by the sponsors of the position of the ex officio chairman of the board of the Land Bank. I wish to go back to the revised poverty threshold. I raised this in the hearing, and the answer was tentative because they were still, I believe the Dev was still putting together the numbers. May we know what is now the poverty threshold? Do we have the numbers? Yes, for a family of 5. What was it before, and what will it be moving forward?
For NCR, Mr. President, the poverty ratio for a family of 5 is 15,714 pesos per month, Mr. President.
Family of 5, okay. This is 2025, October 2025.
This is as of 2023, Mr. President.
Okay, 2025.
And the estimated poverty threshold for 2025, Mr. President, will increase to 20,312 per month for a family of 5, Mr. President.
Okay, that's the estimate, 20,000
Yes, Mr. President.
for NCR.
This is for NCR, Mr. President.
So it's by region, or would you have...
Yes, by region, Mr. President, because the food prices per region is different, Mr. President.
But if you average it out, what is the national average? Yes, I
Yes,
understand.
Mr. President, for a family of 5, the national average will be 17,600, Mr. President.
17,600. And it's a jump from 11,000.
Yes, Mr. President, you're correct.
Okay, good. Because that's precisely why there was a degree of concern about the 64 pesos per day food threshold based on the 11,000. And now it's almost double, actually.
Yes, Mr. President. Well, Mr. President, as you know, as our economy grows, our poverty thresholds go down as
Yes.
well, Mr. President, and that's good for us, Mr. President.
Okay, so just to run up, NCR, it's 15,500 per month in 2023, and it's projected, estimate to be 20,000 a month for a family of 5 for 2025. And the national average, of course it varies for every region, would be, the poverty threshold would be 17,600 a month. Okay.
Yes, Mr. President.
Thank you for that information. I have other questions, but I will go through perhaps a second round and allow other colleagues to raise their questions. Thank you very much, good sponsor. Thank you very much to Secretaries Recto,
Your Honor.
Secretary Balik.
Your Honor, Senator Pangilinan, aren't you going to ask about the 500,000 limit?
Yes, I just did, Mr. President.
And
they,
what do they plan to do?
they are now reviewing it. Ang sagot nila is, basta may supporting documents, it can be higher than 500,000, but they agree that it has had an effect in terms of, well, in a way, the ease of doing business because transactions have become more difficult, bank transactions. And they've also said that it may affect the overall health of the economy when such economic transactions are hindered because of such policies. So they're now reviewing it, and they're hopefully you can end the review and come up with a more flexible policy, Mr. Sponsor.
Well,
I mean,
Mr. President,
All right.
you can view this as a friction in business, Mr. President. For example, before, if you need to give salaries to your employees, you only need to go to the bank once. But now you have to go several times because of the cap, Mr. President. So it's friction in a sense that you waste time, you waste gasoline, you waste effort. So friction, as we all know, slows down our economy, Mr. President.
Thank
All
you.
right. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you. I'd like to place on record that I'm very thankful that we have Senator Win Gatchalian as our chairman of the Committee on Finance. He has been very sympathetic to the agriculture sector, and we thank him for that. And we hope that in the next 3 years we will have leaps and bounds in terms of government spending in agriculture, correct spending in agriculture and fisheries.
Correctly, of course.
Yes, thank you, thank you.
Thank you, Senator.
Mr. President, thank you, Majority Leader, thank you, good sponsor. Thank you, Secretaries RC, Secretary Ralph, Secretary Amina, and to the entire DB, to our representative from the BSP. Maraming salamat. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Majority Leader.
Yes, Mr. President, next to interpolate is Senator Joel Villanueva. I move that he be recognized.
Senator Joel Villanueva is recognized.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Thank you, Majority Leader. Mr. President, may we know if our distinguished chairperson of the Senate Committee on Finance would yield to some questions from this humble representation?
Yes, Mr. President, I'll be more than happy to receive questions from my kakambal, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, at the onset, may I just put into the records of this August chamber that if you look at the government's revenue performance, it continues to show improvement with 16.7% revenue effort in 2024. The highest po ito in 3 decades, reflecting stronger collection, efficiency, and fiscal discipline. For 2026, revenues are projected to reach 5 trillion pesos, with tax collections expected to grow by an average of 10% annually from 2025 to 2028. And with that, we'd like to commend the efforts of our Department of Finance, Department of Budget and Management. We have, of course, Senator Secretary Ralph Recto, our mentor here in this August chamber, together with Secretary Mina, Secretary Balisacan, and the entire DBCC family. Again, we commend them for their efforts to sustain this positive momentum in revenue generation and fiscal consolidation. Mr. President, now as we transition to the implementation of program convergence budgeting, I feel that there is an opportunity, Mr. President, to further optimize spending and ensure that every peso borrowed and spent yields the greatest possible value to the Filipino people. So my first question, Mr. President, is while we acknowledge that revenue now largely cover operating expenses and debt service, while borrowings, yung inuutang po natin, ito pa rin po yung nagpa-fund ng ating capital outlays. And with our revenue effort, as we mentioned earlier, 16.7% in 2024, the highest in nearly 3 decades, how can we begin, Mr. Chairman, the gradual shift toward revenue-funded investment instead of heavy reliance on new debt, Mr. President?
Mr. President, I can attest that the country is doing very well in terms of revenue effort. In fact, I just came from a tax forum in Jakarta, I think 2 months ago. and we were comparing numbers in terms of revenue effort here in the ASEAN, we're actually the highest in terms of revenue effort, especially on from tax revenues, Mr. President. Much higher than our peers here in the ASEAN, Mr. President. Although the question of the good gentleman from Bulacan will not be as easy because we have to balance raising taxes as well as spending, Mr. President. And we all know that raising taxes is also a very difficult endeavor, as well as it's a very sensitive balancing act, Mr. President.
But the goal is still there, Mr. President?
Well, Mr. President, looking at the... Yeah. Correct, Mr. President. Well, Mr. President, yesterday, Senator Pia, through the Committee on Ways and Means, held a hearing on the government's revenue effort. And looking at the next 3 years, there'll be, I think, one revenue tax that the DOF is pushing. So having said that, Mr. President, we now have to look at how to grow our economy, or how to address our spending through borrowings and increasing our borrowings, Mr. President, so that we can address the needs of our country. And Mr. President, what's important here is we have to continue to grow, Mr. President.
Yes.
We have to continue to grow our economy so that the strategy here is to outgrow the debt that we are incurring, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. President. But I think it's important to note that that is still the goal. The shift towards revenue-funded investment.
Yes,
instead
Mr.
of-
President.
Yes. And I think if I hear it right, as I was listening not just to the chairperson of the Senate Committee on Finance, but also to our idol guru, Senator Ralph Recto, he was saying it's not that easy because definitely it would be gradual, Mr. President. But I think it is important to note that that is still the goal, Mr. President.
Yes, definitely, Mr. President. If
Yeah.
we can, that's why it's important to be efficient in revenue collection,
Yes,
Mr.
and
President.
that brings me to my next question, Mr. President. If you look at the total revenues for fiscal year 2026, it is projected at 5 trillion pesos, with disbursements reaching 6.63 trillion, which is 21.5% of our GDP, creating a 1.6 trillion financing gap. And with this in mind, I thought it would be interesting to find out our strategies, if there are any strategies in place to ensure that the economic growth consistently outpaces debt growth, not only through fiscal consolidation, Mr. President, but also through improved absorptive capacity, better program execution, and the implementation of what we mentioned a while ago of program convergence budgeting to optimize returns from every peso being borrowed, Mr. President.
Right, Mr. President. Yeah, that's
So-
why...
So the strategies are in place, Mr.
Yes,
President.
Mr. President.
May we hear?
What's important is to continue to grow our economy as fast as we can, Mr. President, to make sure that the bottlenecks are addressed, confidence of our investor continues to grow, because we also rely on investment to grow our economy. So all of these things should come into play, Mr. President, because if we continue to grow our economy, then borrowing, well, we can still borrow, but we can outgrow our borrowing, Mr. President.
Yes, Mr. President, if I may, and please, I beg the indulgence of my good friend and our chairperson of the Senate Committee on Finance, if we can hear something like a particular strategy that we are looking at to right now, that we will be able to implement in order to achieve this goal, Mr. President.
President, we also approved here in the Senate the medium-term fiscal framework. And this is the guiding document for the DOF and the economic managers to reduce our debt and our deficit over time, Mr. President. Admittedly, this is not easy because of various headwinds that we cannot forecast. But the goal here is to reduce our deficit, reduce our debt to GDP, continue to grow our economy, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. President. And I'm happy to report also, Mr. President, that we supported this particular measure, this initiative that aims to narrow the fiscal deficit from 6.5% of GDP in 2022 to 3% by 2028, bring down the debt to GDP ratio below 60%, sustain annual growth of 6.5% to 8%, and maintain infrastructure spending at around 5% to 6% of GDP to support economic expansion and job creation. Perhaps, Mr. President, what we are looking at, Mr. President, is perhaps ask, for example, Mr. President, a specific sector, yung bright spots, kumbaga ho, Mr. President, na pwede po nating makita right now. For example, yung pong trabaho para sa bayan law that we passed, I think they have already come up with a strategy on how we'll be able to come up with our master plan insofar as job creation is concerned.
I was advised by the Secretary of DepDev that the Trabaho para sa Bayan plan is already integrated in their planning, integrated in their forecast, and the Trabaho para sa Bayan, which you authored, Mr. President, and sponsored, is already an integral part of their planning process, Mr. President. So, and I know that the Trabaho para sa Bayan addresses the issue of job mismatch, and also addresses the issue of job forecasting or demand forecasting, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. President. Let me go to another topic that, of course, Mr. President, I don't want to leave sana itong program convergence budgeting, no? Yung implementation po nito. Pwede ho bang tanungin na lang din, Mr. President, how can government ensure that borrowing supports projects designed for multiple and complementary uses, Mr. President? Kunyari po yung water impounding facilities that can also serve as irrigation sources during dry months, yung pong storage or retention systems during rainy seasons, Mr. President. May we know how can the government ensure na ganito po yung borrowing policy natin, Mr. President?
Well, Mr. President, I think what's obviously lacking in this whole flood control mess is a plan. No? Wala tayong plano. No? I think that's very clear.
I cannot disagree more, Mr.
Correct.
President.
So I'm sad to say this, but yeah. So
Yes, Mr.
there was
President.
zero plans at all. No? Kaya tayo nasa ganitong
I cannot
gulo.
agree more, Mr. President. You and I we were together during the 2022-2023 investigation on flood control. We have been talking about this, that there is no plan. It is not integrated. It is not well thought of, Mr. President. And we have been saying that since 2023.
I can attest to that, Mr. President, that you were very vocal in raising the issue that there's no plan whatsoever in addressing the flooding in the province of Bulacan and also in Metro Manila, Mr. President. And sad to say, because of that absence in a plan, nandito na tayo, nagkaloko-loko na, Mr. President. So I think that's
yes.
the objective of the economic managers now, is to moving forward that all of this flood control should be part of a well-researched, science-based master plan, so that we won't waste resources, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. President. That's the only reason why I wanted to raise this particular question, Mr. President. And if you look at the implementation of program convergence budgeting, Mr. President, it provides an important opportunity to address po itong mga challenges na ito, no? Nakita po natin, for example, by integrating efforts across agencies such as DPWH, DENR, NIA, and LGUs, yung pong program convergence budgeting can help ensure na yung pondo po ay directed to the areas of greatest need, and that the government investments, particularly in climate resilience and flood control, yield the most value for every peso spent. In fiscal year 2026, Mr. President, ang pamahalaan po, nakalagay nga po dito, plans to borrow around 2.7 trillion, if I'm not mistaken, no? With 950 billion pesos allocated for interest payments, about 14% of total expenditures. Please correct me if my data is incorrect. I can see our Secretary of DOF giving me a thumbs up. Mr. President, may we know how can this whole of government approach enhance debt efficiency by ensuring that, again, every peso borrowed yields lasting cross-sectoral value for our people, from water and agriculture to energy, transport, and community infrastructure?
Well, Mr. President, just on the program convergence budgeting, Mr. President, that's the moving forward in the plan of the DBM together with the DepDev to make sure that all of these plans are not only on paper but also executed through wise budgeting, Mr. President. So you're absolutely correct in raising this very important budgeting concept, so that we can avoid a lot of those wastages that we saw in the flood control program, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. President. I will no longer ask questions on foreign direct investments. This was tackled earlier as I was listening, Mr. President, in the interpellations. Mr. President, let me go to one project or one particular law that we passed here in the Senate, which is the Government Optimization Act. Mr. President, over the years, around 1 in every 10 authorized government positions has remained unfilled. Alam na alam po ng chairman natin na ito'y advokasya natin. Inabutan ko pa si then Senator Ralph Recto. Ito'y naging aking advokasya na. In 2026, there has been a modest improvement, Mr. President, with only 7.51% nag-improve finally, Mr. President. A total of 2 million positions unfilled compared to 9% in 2021. This means that approximately 1 in every 13 positions is still vacant, Mr. President. Again, kung matatandaan nyo po, laging 1:10. For every 10 positions, vacant po yung, hindi po napupunan yung isa. Ngayon po, 13 na. So nag-improve by 3 positions. Finally, Mr. Chairman, natatawa ka kasi every year tayong dalawa, lagi tayong magkatabi pag pinag-uusapan ho natin ito. So Mr. President, with the recent passage of the Government Optimization Act, how is this expected to reshape the landscape of authorized positions across government agencies, Mr. President?
That's an excellent question, Mr. President. Well, just to report to His Honor that in the 2026 budget, there's a 10 billion peso allocation for government optimization under the MPBF. And I believe this will fund the necessary amounts to operationalize the government optimization. Let me just get back to the status, Mr. President.
Pero sa JO yun, di ba? I think, Mr. President, if I may clarify the good chairman, I think it is for the job orders and the contract of service, yung 10 billion. If I'm not mistaken, it's not for the...
No, it's for everything,
It's
Mr.
for
President.
everything.
So, Mr. President, and I have good news. Tomorrow, the IRR for the government optimization will be released.
I was about to ask that question.
Thank you, Mr.
Thank
President.
you.
And thank you for asking that, Mr. President, because in the review of the budget, marami ho kaming nakitang mga agencies na obsolete na or redundant o mga agencies na kaya nang gawin ng private sector o kaya nang gawin ng industry as part of their self-regulation. Hindi naman ho kailangan ng gobyerno to regulate everything. The industry can regulate themselves. No? So, in the review of the budget, we see a lot of agencies na sayang lang ho yung pera dahil nagiging redundant o hindi na ho kailangan yung agencies. And we'll submit to the DBM our own findings and recommendations so that they can analyze and review these agencies, and then they can optimize the government by merging or abolishing or collapsing some of these agencies.
Thank you, Mr. President. At para hindi po tayo tumagal, siguro pwedeng kahit makahingi lang po tayo ng initial assessment doon po sa mga... Wala pa rin po yan.
Wala pa, Mr. President. So, start pa lang. Ang maganda, may funding na, may IRR na bukas.
Kasi alam ko nung tinap ako to sponsor the measure, may mga pag-aaral na nun eh. Nung time na yun.
May
So,
mga initial estimates, I think, Mr. President. I
Yeah, and,
remember that interpellation. But we will get some definite answers in the next few weeks, Mr. President.
And you were saying, Mr. President, that the IRR will be signed soon because...
Tomorrow, Mr. President.
Tomorrow, Mr. President.
Issued tomorrow.
That's very good news, Mr. President. And you made mention, Mr. President, no, because under the law, it mandates COEB, or the Committee on Optimizing the Executive Branch, to conduct a strategic review of executive agencies to evaluate their roles, functions, effectiveness, identify inefficiencies, and recommend reforms to enhance efficiency, coordination, and alignment with national development goals. May mga low-hanging fruits po na nakikita na tayo. Tumatango po si Secretary Mina. For example, Mr. President, yung optical media board. Ano pa bang pwedeng gawin ng optical media board? Pwede pa ho ba silang gawin? Nung time po na dinidiscuss natin, and again, this is with all due respect to our friends in government, of course, gusto natin alagaan sila, malagay sila sa tamang posisyon sa gobyerno at masiguro din na mapoprotektahan yung kanilang karapatan. I remember, Mr. President, and Senator Recto was still with us during that time when we were discussing the Department of Migrant Workers. A certain agency, that agency, Commission on Filipino Overseas, if I'm not mistaken, CFO ba yun? CFO,
Tama.
Mr. President. And then when we asked what programs they are implementing, we were told na yung mga nakatira, for example, sa Inglaterra, i-recruit sila na pumunta sa Pilipinas para makabisita dito sa Pilipinas. Yun yung program nila, and the chairperson is laughing, and I know you still remember that particular time when we were talking about this, and this has been, 5-6 years ago, Mr. President. So, ito lang po, nais ko lang banggitin po ito para masiguro natin na yung pinaghirapan din nating panukalang batas noon na ngayon ay Republic Act number 12231 ay mapapakinabangan na ng ating mga ng ating pamahalaan.
I share your sentiment, Mr. President. I'm 101% with you, Mr. President, on those observations. In fact, mayroon rin kaming na-observe, mayroon rin kami na-observe under kay Secretary Balisacan, yung Philippine National Volunteer Service Coordinating Agency. Parang kailangan pa ba natin ng agency para kumuha ng volunteers? May Red Cross naman, meron namang LGU to gather volunteers. So, and no, walang personalan po. I'm sure nandito sila. No? But we're just saying na we have to optimize government resources sayang ho yung pera eh. No? Some of the NGOs can do it better than government, Mr. President.
I can also share, Mr. President, especially with our DBCC members, Mr. President, that when we were in TESDA, we were looking at several agencies of the government implementing trainings. There's TESDA in the Department of Agriculture. There's TESDA in the Department of Trade and Industry. There's TESDA in... there's so many training programs, Mr. President. Nakakalito na po, Mr. President. And itong batas na ating ipinasa ay tingin ko malaking magiging tulong para sa ating pamahalaan. And that brings me to my next question. Do we have updated estimates, Mr. President, on the potential savings na magmumula po dito sa optimization program, along with any revised parameters and assumptions that will somehow guide the implementation of the law moving forward, Mr. President?
Meron pa nga ho tayo, Philippine Racing Commission, Mr. President. Pati ba karera ng kabayo, kailangan pa pasukan ng gobyerno, Mr. President? I think yung private sector na pwede na ho silang to self-regulate. I don't know kung nandito sila, but those are the things that I think government should stay out of and let the private sector self-regulate. No?
I agree and I share the sentiments of our dear chairman.
Marami pa yan, Mr. President.
Yes, I recall, Mr. President,
Secretary Mina, the list.
Secretary Mina, I recall there was a time that I was given that the cost-benefit analysis presented to our office by DBM that the potential savings could range from 3 to 7 billion, if I'm not mistaken. Is that a decent figure, Mr. President?
Mr. President, I was just informed that the initial estimate is between 750 million to 2 billion savings a year, Mr. President.
Okay.
So when I say savings on electricity, on rent, on sweldo, hindi lang naman ho sweldo.
Kasi ito yung mga nag-overlap na eh, no?
Yes, Mr. President.
Pare-pareho
Like I said,
ginagawa.
Mr. President, that your question is very important in this topic, Mr. President, because we can keep on allocating funds, we keep on sourcing funds, pero maraming funds rin nasasayang, no? And that's why all of these agencies that can be utilized to a much better output and outcomes, government should do so. And if, like I said, if the private sector can self-regulate, let them self-regulate rather than government going into pati karera ng kabayo, Mr. President, pinapasukan natin, which I really think is not the job of government.
Thank you, Mr. President. I share the same, Mr. President. Mr. President, let me go to what the good chairman made mention a while ago, that the DBM has confirmed that there's 10 billion pesos has been allocated in the 2026 proposed budget under the MPBF for the implementation of the Government Optimization Act. Mr. President, this funding will particularly support not just the filling up of job orders and the contract of service workers. Is that correct, Mr. President?
Mr. President, it will fund various activities in the optimization implementation. For example, hindi naman ho magtatanggal lang ng tao, no? We can government's aim is to put them in the offices and agencies that are needing more employees, Mr. President. So we will also create positions. We will also promote certain positions. So all of these things will be part of that 10 billion, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. President. Just so we can appreciate all the more this particular topic, Mr. President. In June 30, 2025, the government employs a total of 919,868 job orders and contract of service workers. Believe it or not, Mr. President, and you are aware of this, I have been perennially every year raising this particular issue. There's a slight decrease from the previous year's figure, 939,000 po dati, 771.
So may slight improvement. Nakakatuwa kahit papano, Mr. President. But if I share with you my personal experience since 2017, I remember 2017 when I took the cudgels of raising this particular issue every single year. In 2017, there's only about 657,067 job orders and contract of service. Again, this June 30, 2025, that's 919,868. Mr. President, with this in mind, are there specific government agencies foreseen as likely to somehow implement this initiative first, given the image, Mr. President, and the large number of JOs and COS workers they currently employ?
I thank the good gentleman from Bulacan for consistently raising this issue, Mr. President. In fact, we missed you during the po to talagang dapat ho natin planuhin mabuti, strategically, kung ano po yung mga dapat nating unahin na i-address bilang isang bansa. At the same time, ano po yung mga bagay na kailangan natin para lalong lumaki ang ating ekonomiya.
Mr. President, they say that the devil is in the details. Naitanong ko po kay Secretary Recto nung panahon na nagbe-briefing pa yung kanyang departamento. So para ma-achieve natin more or less ang 30 trillion output ng ating economy, he suggested that we should grow as fast as we can. As a matter of fact, I recall he said, maybe we should grow at 7.5%. Mr. President, na-recall ko po kaya ng tama yun.
Ang target ho natin next year, Senator Dante, is between 5 to 6%. Yun po ang ating target.
Yun nga po, kaya ako'y nalulungkot. Narinig ko nga yun sapagkat yung 30 trillion pesos trillion pesos para po yun ay ma-achieve natin, kailangan natin talagang maitaas, maiangat ang ating ekonomiya na mas mabilis kaysa doon sa ating pagpupunyagi na mapanagutan ng ating mga utang. Mas mabilis dapat yung pagsulong ng ekonomiya. Kaya sabi ni Secretary Recto, at least 7.5% or even more. Ngayon po, Mr. President, talagang ako po ay nalulungkot kung paano natin gagawin. Sumadsad po yung ating ekonomiya 4%. Itong nakaraang quarter. And the foreseeable future is very, very bleak. May nagsasabi po, our stock market is the worst in the region today. Our currency is the worst in the region. And then, may nagsasabi pa po, foreign direct investment dropped by more than 40%. So with this bleak scenario ahead of us, yung sinasabi po ninyo, Mr. President, na mga headwinds na maaaring magpabagal pa sa pagsulong ng ating ekonomiya. Nakakatakot po ang lahat ng ito. Kaya, paano po kaya natin gagamitin ang ating mga granular analysis dito? Like for example, at 6.7 trillion pesos, Mr. President, gano'n po kaya yung idadagdag sa ating per capita GDP? Dapat meron po tayo kahit pa paanong estimates. The balancing act is there, but the details must also be presented. Kahit pa paano, ay makita po natin kung tatama o hindi. Kasi po, nung isang araw, bumisita po yung ambassador ng Australia sa aking opisina at sa aming pag-uusap. Napag-usapan po yung per capita GDP. Kamuntik na po ako nahulog sa aking upuan, Mr. President. Kasi ngayon ko lang po talaga tahasang nakita. As of 2024, the per capita GDP of Australia is $64,500 US. Mr. President, tayo po, 2024, magkano po yung per capita GDP in US dollars? So, kung 4,500...
4,500
Narinig ko.
US dollars, Mr. President.
$64,500 per capita Australia. Tayo po ay 4,000.
Malayo pa, Mr. President. Pero Mr. President,
Yung purchasing power parity natin, siguro times 2 niya, 9,000.
yes. And also, Mr. President, next year ho, maabot na ho natin yung upper middle income status. Kasi kulang na lang ho tayo ng $24, if I'm not, $26, Mr. President. So, in other words, lumalaki naman po yung ating economy, even on a per capita basis, Mr.
Gusto ko pong maniwala, Mr. President, kasi po, nung nakaraang taon, sa ganito rin pagkakataon, Ang pagkakaiba lang, nandun po ako sa House of Representatives. Ngayon po ay nasa Senado ako. At that time, I think last year, of the original members of the ASEAN, tayo na lamang pong hindi nakaka-graduate doon sa upper middle income. Halos ang lahat po ay nakaakyat na eh. Yun po yung nakakalungkot na bahagi. Kaya, with all due respect, kami po ay naghahanap ng konting mga detalye. At parang narinig ko pa nga ang estimates noon last year, ang sinabi ng ating kalihim ng DBM, by 2028, pasensya na kung gano'n ang pagkakatanda ko, Madam Secretary, buong tapang niyang sinabi na yung ating poverty incidence rate, sabi niya gano'n, magiging 1 digit. Ngayon po, ano na po yung percentage ng ating poverty incidence rate ngayon, Mr. President? Sabi mo kanina parang 16, narinig ko 16%. Ngayon po, matatapos na po ang 2025, papasok na tayo sa 2026, halos 2 taon mahigit. Kung ang projection is for the country to achieve a 1-digit poverty incidence rate, maganda po sana ngayon. Palagay niyo makukuha po natin yan, Mr. President?
Ngayon po, Mr. President, ang ating poverty incidence officially is about 15.5%. Ang target po is single digit by 2028. So, base po sa mga analysis ng DepDev, kaya naman po umabot ng single digit by 2028. Kung ang takbo ng ekonomiya natin ay ganito ho, mga nasa 5%, 6%, tapos tuloy po yung mga programa ho natin para po sa mga mahihirap nating mga kababayan, aabot naman ho tayo doon.
Yun nga po but we are held up by our macro and microeconomic assumptions. Mga indicators na ginagamit natin. If we say that we aim at 1-digit poverty incidence rate by 2028, the assumptions must be that dapat hindi gumalaw din. Every other indicators must be held constant. The economist would say, ceteris paribus. So, ang laki po ng factors na maring hindi rin natin makuha kahit na 6.7 trillion. Ang gusto ko pong tuntunin, Mr. President, kung hindi naman natin mapuproduce talaga the desired GDP to finance 6.7 trillion, bakit po tayo nag-isip ng ganong kalaking budget? Parang halimbawa, yung pamilya ng ating respected majority leader, ang kinikita niya ay X amount per month or per year. Pwede bang i-present sa kanya ng kanyang butihing asawa na ngayon ay miyembro ng Kongreso? Oh, darling, sabi niya, ito ang budget natin for next year. Sabi ng ating majority leader, Mr. President, ba't naman ganyan kalaki? Alam mo naman ang sweldo ko, ganito lang. Bakit doble pa dun sa kaya kong ibigay? Mahirapan naman ako rito. Ang sabi ng kanyang butihing asawa, Mr. President, hindi ko problema yan. Ikaw ang ano niyan. Ito ang kinakailangan nating maipundar sapagkat kinuwenta ko na lahat ng pangangailangan natin, ang ating mga anak, ang kanilang pag-aaral, ang kanilang kalusugan at lahat-lahat na. Paano po yun? Hindi ba pwedeng sabihin ng ating majority leader, dahan-dahan ka naman. Hihirapan tayo dyan. Maaring lahat ay makuha natin sa pag-estimate. Ngunit, sa actual, mahirapan naman tayo. Kasi po, tingnan ninyo, ang projected income is only 5 trillion. Ang ating budget ay 6.7 trillion. Uutangin natin 1.7 trillion. Eh hindi naman natin kayang ipundar yung ekonomiya para ma-achieve natin ang 30 trillion pesos or so. Because by that, we need to grow by not only 7.5%, maybe more. Mr. President.
Mr. President, sa growth at 5%, aabot na ho tayo ng 30 trillion pesos, Mr. President, in terms of economic size, Mr. President.
We said that.
Gusto ko maniwala, Mr. President.
Siyempre, kung mas mabilis pa, mas maganda, Mr. President. Mas maganda, Mr. President.
Ngayon ang mahalaga kung uutang tayo.
Siguro po magagawa natin yun, Mr. President, kung pagtutulungan natin. Halimbawa po, gusto kong itanong po sa ating DepDep, yung pag-allocate po ng mga budget sa ating mga ahensya para sa ganun ay ma-promote naman ng mga industries na nag-ooperate sa ating economy. Di po ba meron kayong tinatawag na input-output table, Mr. President?
Po, Mr. President.
Gaano po kalaki yung ating input-output table
Malaki yan.
sa economy?
Mga 64 sectors po, Mr. President. 64 sectors ang covered.
Parang hindi po accurate kasi
64 by 64, Mr. President, to be accurate about it.
in the late 80s parang 200 by 200 po eh. Can you check your data? You might be referring to subsector.
Yes, yun po yung subsectors, Mr. President.
The entire economy.
24
Mr. President.
by 240 by 240. Yung
Okay, that's more accurate. 245 by 245. Importante po kasi yun, Mr. President, because doon sa input-output table, makikita po natin ang mga industries that influence each other. Doon makikita natin, alin ba yung dapat nating i-promote? Alin ba dapat nating supportan because it affects and it influences maybe more than the others. Para sa ganon, malalaman natin kung talagang may hit natin ang target o hindi. Because kung sinuportahan natin yung industry, pag tiningnan nyo po sa inyong table, tatatlo lang naman palang industry ang kanyang pwedeng suportahan. Pwede ba nating malaman ngayon, ano ba yung mga industries, for example? Somebody said that construction industry is the only one na parang bumagsak ngayon. Kasi nga, ang nangyari, siguro dahil nga sa iskandalong dinulot po ng flood control, medyo atubili ngayon ang lahat ng industry na may kinalaman sa public and private construction. Pati construction activities might be delayed, pati procurement. So, pati ang mamumuhunan dyan, ilan po ang mga industries na affected kung bumagsak ang isang industry kagaya ng construction industry? Ito po kasi yung dapat nating makita eh. Imbes na pinag-uusapan po natin ay kung ano-ano, wala naman po kaming nakikita kung saan papunta po yung perang ilalagay at ilang industry ang maapektuhan, and that industry will be able to capacitate or even influence the growth of another and vice versa. Wala po kaming ganong idea. And no one even presented para sa aming kaalaman, kahit na po siguro in general terms, para makikita po natin, and even in the matter of deciding where to invest our finite resources, the Senate will be guided, Mr. President.
Tama ho kayo, Mr. President. Itong nangyayari ho sa ating ekonomiya, lalo na yung pagbagal po at 4%, isang dahilan ho dyan ay yung construction industry. Nabanggit ko nga ho kanina. At marami ho itong kasing konektadong industriya. For example po, mga hardware, delivery trucks, yung mga nagtatrabaho po sa mga delivery trucks, yung mga nagtatrabaho po sa hardware, of course, yung gumagawa ng bakal, gumagawa ng semento, gumagawa ng kahoy, gumagawa ng pako. Marami pong konektadong industriya po sa construction industry. Kaya yan po ay isa sa pinaka malawak na industriya sa ating bansa. Dahil hindi lang naman po gobyerno nagko-construct, pati private sector ang nagko-construct. Pero Mr. President, Senator Marcoleta, DepDev can submit to you a much more comprehensive study on the effects of the slowdown of the construction industry para ho talagang komprehensibo po yung ibibigay na report.
Wala naman po akong particular interest. Kumbaga nagamit ko lamang po halimbawa because somebody said na medyo naapektuhan po nga yung construction industry.
Pero maganda ho pag-aralan to dahil ho talagang kung magiging ganito pa in the next quarter, makikita ho natin pagbagal ng ekonomiya ho.
Siguro po, kayo po, Mr. President, Chairman, ay mas karapat-dapat na makatanggap niyan sapagkat malawak po ang inyong responsibilidad sa inyo pong balikat nakasalalay ngayon ang paglalatag ng ating 2026 budget. Napakalaking bagay po yan. It is a very important reference and input for you to consider, Mr. President. Actually, hindi lang pako, hindi lang bakal, pati po bato na ginagamit, yung tinatawag nilang aggregates. Ano po? Merong riverbed, merong minimina sa bundok na kung tawagin, may kanya-kanyang sizes pa yun, Mr. President. Meron G1, meron 3/4, meron 3/8, maliban pa yung Porac sand na kinukuha sa Porac, Pampanga, yung mga tailings, lahat ng ito Dikit-dikit po yan kasi. Kaya po kung walang maliwanag na larawan kung paano ang bawat industry ay nagkakaroon ng epekto sa bawat isa, kung paano ang isa ay naiimpluwensya ng bawat isa, medyo parang hindi namin masundan kung paano talaga natin makukuha yung minimithi nating mga targets upang sa ganun ay matustusan natin ang napakalaking budget na nailatag ng ating pamahalaan. Kaya po, medyo may konting duda lang po, Mr. President, kasi po may mga taong kinikilala naman sa ating lipunan, lalo po yung nasa business sector. Halimbawa po yung PCCI, the Philippine Chamber of Commerce and Industry, yung kanilang president na si Enonina Mangyo, sinabi po niya na anemic po talaga yung 4% GDP growth At sabi niya, it's a wake-up call and reflects the challenges confronting key sectors of our economy. Ito po kanya ay, it is the weakest output since the 3.8% contraction of the economy na inapektuhan po ng pandemic. Sinabi pa po niya, Mr. President, MSMEs continue to struggle with high cost and limited access to financing. Manufacturers face rising production costs and logistical constraints. And our agriculture sector still needs stronger support to improve productivity. Ito po yung kanilang mga saloobin at mga pangamba. Yun naman pong chair ng Federation of Philippine Industry, Elizabeth Lee, noted that the Philippines has been grappling with investors' risk aversion. Ito yung problema po People are spending less as prices bite and confidence dips. So hindi lamang po kami na nandito, tayong lahat na nandito sa Senado, Mr. President, kundi mga kinikilalang mga figura, mga industry captains ang nagpapahayag po ng pangamba kung saan patungo po ang ating ekonomiya. Si Alfred Panlilio po, na presidente ng Management Association of the Philippines. This is definitely very concerning, sabi po niya. He was referring to the 4% growth na talagang ikinabigla nating lahat. Ang sabi pa po niya, in my view, it is all about confidence in the country with all these corruption issues coming out. Mr. President, pati ang European Chamber of Commerce of the Philippines, ang sabi niya, as a consumption-driven economy, we see the recent crackdown in corruption as a contributor to slower than normal growth due to cancellation of government projects. Ito po yung sinasabi natin kanina, dahil nga po sa maanumalyang pagpapatupad ng flood control projects, ay talaga pong naging negatibo ang pananaw ng napakaraming leaders ng ating industriya. Mr. President.
Actually, ay nakikipag-usap lang po kay Senator Recto, kay Senator Balisacan. Isa rin pong dahilan, Mr. President, and I saw this also dito sa SGB report, yung household consumption rin ho natin bumagal, Mr. President. Bumagal dahil sa kumpiyansa ng tao, dahil rin sa mga bagyo na nararanasan ho natin. So ito rin isang dahilan kung bakit ho bumagal po yung ating third quarter economic growth. But ngayon papasok na ho tayo ng Pasko. Alam naman ho natin na during Pasko, every Christmas, ang tao po ay gumagastos. So hopefully mag-rebound yung ating household consumption. Yung construction naman po ay nandyan na ho ang bagong pamunuan ng DPWH. Maayos ho nila yung problema doon at ma-revive rin ulit yung construction industry, especially from the DPWH. So mayroon naman po tayong mga bright spots, Mr. President. At kaya kumpiyansa rin po ang ating economic managers na kaya nating umabot ng at least mga 5.1%, 5%, at least 5% by end of the year, Mr. President. The low end of the target, Mr. President.
Pero mas maganda po siguro, Mr. President, na hindi lamang tayo bumabase sa Disyembre dahil darating ang mga festivities, kundi sana all year round naman po, meron tayong inaasahan na makakapagpasigla sa ating mamamayan, paano ma-increase yung kanilang personal disposable income. Mamaya po meron akong i-recommenda, total, nandyan na naman po si Secretary Recto at si Secretary Pangandaman, kung hindi naman po sila ko kontra.
Hindi ko kontra
Si
po yan.
Secretary
Basta
Recto
kayo.
hindi po kumontra doon sa isang proposal ko. Mamaya meron pong isa, sana hindi na naman siya kukontra para po maging masaya.
Hindi ko kontra yan,
ang,
sigurado.
ang kinabukasan natin. Sa DepDep, dahil nga po sa gulong idinulot ng flood control projects, malinaw po that we were able to establish that there is no comprehensive integrated master plan of flood control program. We were able to find out that the agency that is supposed to be overseeing the master planning and overseeing this is a small agency. Oh no, it's not an agency. I think it's a small office within the Department of National, ano ba yung DN? Environment and Natural Resources. Yun po tinatawag na River Basin Control Office. Alam po ba ninyo, Secretary Balisacan, pag tinignan po niya yung opisina na yon at yung mandate niya, which is governed by two, I think, executive orders, sila pala ang merong responsibilidad na gumawa ng isang master plan by being able to integrate the 18 river basins in this country. Sa makatwid, kung yung po ay integrated and comprehensive, wala pong masasayang eh. Hindi yung isolated. Dito pinag-uusapan lang po natin flood control muna. Maglatag po kayo ng flood control na hindi po magkakakonekta. Saan po pupunta yon? Sa kawalan. Sa puro sayang. Kahit na ipagpalagay po natin na hindi ghost, pagpalagay natin na these flood control projects were constructed according to specifications the materials are superior. Eh kung hindi rin naman sila magkakadugtong eh. Wala rin pong mangyayari. Parang wala pong strategic impact. There is no strategic national impact hanggat hindi po nyo pinakialaman. Kasi po kayo yung national architect. Eh. You are supposed to be the one that will ensure that all these projects makikinabang ang buong bansa. The national impact is more important than the regional or even the myopic impact that it may probably give to a certain locality. Do you agree, Mr. President?
Yeah. So, Mr. President, under the new charter of DepDev, master planning of various sectors will be under the ambit of DepDev. So meaning they will now oversee the master planning of, for example po, itong mga flood control projects, different river basins, and to make sure that the culture of planning is implemented and practiced in across different agencies, Mr. President. So not only on paper, but really on action. No? So paplano, then they will allocate, they will program the plans, and then after that, allocate funds to implement the plans.
Is it safe to assume, Mr. President, that the DepEd started with the next year budget? Parang dumaan na po sa inyo ngayon lahat yung naipundar na mga projects, more specifically flood control and the more critical projects. Nagsimula na po ba tayo dito sa budget na pinag-uusapan natin ngayon? O magsisimula pa lamang kayo?
Mag-umpisa pa lang po.
So katwid, yung 2026 budget, Mr. President, kanya-kanya pa rin.
Well, Mr. President, for 2026, wala na pong flood control projects. Dahil nga ho, kung wala pong master plan, wala pong flood control ho tayong lalagay. At doon po sa mga ibang sectors na kailangan din po ng plano, yun po yung inuumpisahan ho nila. Marami ho kailangan ng plano kasi dami ho tayong ginagastos eh. No, so kailangan ho talaga ng isang sectoral plan, Mr. President.
Kaso po, hindi lang flood control ang pinag-uusapan natin, mga road networks natin, mga bridges, lahat po ng infrastructure. Ang problema pa nga dyan, kung wala na tayong flood control, paano kung talagang kailangan proteksyonan ng komunidad ngayon? Dahil sa takot ngayon natin na baka masangkot na naman ang marami, wala na talagang ilalatag sa flood control. Paano kung talagang ang isang komunidad lagyan dapat ng flood control sapagkat darating na naman ang maraming unos ng buhay? Sino ngayon ang magliligtas sa buhay ng mga komunidad? Dahil sa takot natin, bigla na lang tayo nagpasya. O wala na munang flood control sa 2026 budget, who is going to assure us that our community will be shielded despite the lack and absence of flood control.
Mr.
project.
President, hindi naman po sa walang flood control dahil meron pa hong approximately 150 billion na natitira sa flood control na i-implement po sa 2026. In fact, marami hong hindi ho na i-implement. No? Kaya ho ngayon, bago ho i-implementa ho, talagang pinag-aaralan muna ngayon ng Department of Public Works.
Kasi po,
So may
sabi nyo-
pondo pa, may pondo man ho, Mr. Chairman. It's just hindi lang nila ini-implement dahil natuklasan po ni Secretary Dizon na marami rin po palang mga flood control ni plano o program of work, wala. So yun po ang inaayos ho nila.
Yun nga po, kasi sabi po nyo, wala ng flood control, meron pa pala. So,
Sa natitirang pondo. Pero po yung bagong pondo for 2026, wala na ho. Zero ho siya.
at saka po, Mr. President, initially, ang dami po namin nakita na talagang yung sa sistema po ng pagpapatupad ng mga projects na yan, pinakamarami sa flood control at iba't iba pa. Napansin po namin kasi na talagang namamanipula po talaga doon pa lamang sa net phase pa lang eh. Kagaya po ng nausisa namin nung tinatanong po natin si Secretary Pangandaman, katabi niya ron si Undersecretary Catalina Cabral, napansin ko po kasi na yung ibang expenditures, for example, ng DPWH, yung pong tinatawag nating STOs, at saka lalong-lalo na yung PAPs, Madam Secretary, talagang there is a determined effort na yung ceilings na nilagay po ng DBM sa NEP, talagang binabawasan nila eh. I was able to note at least 2 expenditures, yung STOs and the PAPs. Meron pa nga pong isang taon doon 2025, yung nilagay po ninyong ceiling, inalis nila, ginawa nilang 0 sa GAA. Ang medyo napansin ko rin po ron, sinulatan niyo po sila eh. And in that letter, sabi ninyo, we repeatedly remind you that please strictly adhere to the ceilings established by us kasi pinag-aralan namin ito eh. But they continuously, binabawasan talaga at lumilitaw po, nakita natin kung saan nila nilalagay. Doon sa convergence projects, these are the modern pork barrel. Meron silang SSP, meron silang CCSP, may SDM4, may BIP, lahat-lahat. Maliban pa sa convergence projects na ina-undertake ng ng iba't ibang mga ehensya, katulad ng Roll-It, katulad ng TICAS, bla bla bla. Dito po na ilalagay, dito na isi-switch yung nakukuha, nare-reduce doon sa mga net na nilagay ninyo, na ilalatag nila sa ibang ano eh. Ito yung sistema po na dapat ay nakita nating lahat. Yan pong Maharlika Investment Fund, Mr. President. Ito po ay pinag-isipan at nais sa batas 2 taon na nakararaan. Are the promises of the Maharlika Investment Fund fulfilled, Mr. President? Baka mawala yung... Hindi, ilagay mo din sa... Kasi yung binigay niyo sa akin. Hindi, Maharlika yun. Binigay mo sa akin kanina.
Sa Maharlika po, actually, hindi pa ho ganun karami ang kanilang investments dahil sinisigurado rin ho nila, Mr. President, na yung kanilang investments ay siguradong una-una will contribute to nation building at pangalawa po will yield to returns for the Filipino people. So yung mga na-invest ho nila ngayon, meron ho silang investment sa ATI, yung port operator dito sa ating bansa. Malapit na raw mag-close yung NGCP investment ho, which I agree dito dahil kailangan ho natin may eyes and ears sa NGCP. Meron ho rin silang bridge financing sa isang mining company at the rest puro government security. So ito lang po yung tatlong kumpanya na meron ho silang ka-transaction.
Alam ko po itong tatlong binanggit ninyo, Mr. President. Ang aking pong gusto sanang malaman, ganito po ba ang naging pag-asa natin? Sapagkat yung perang inilagay natin para maging Maharlika Investment Fund, kinuha po natin sa 2 development banks. Ang karamihan po ay kinuha sa Development Bank of the Philippines. at yung iba ay sa land bank. Pwede ba nating sabihin na kung hindi kinuha doon sa mga bangko na yon, na ang perang yon is devoted to development, at ikukumpara natin itong tatlong ginawang investment so far ng MI ng Maharlika Investment Fund, masasabi ba natin na nagtagumpay tayo kung ikukumpara sa potential na nangyari sana kung hindi natin kinuha sa mga bangko yon at sa iba pang mga pinagkuhanan nating sources?
Ang Maharlika po, meron din ho kasi silang nation building function, Mr. President, at kasama rin sa kanilang mandato na mag-invest sa mga they call high impact sectors key to national development. So energy, agriculture, mining, infrastructure, social infrastructure, at the climate, Mr. President. So, and ang konsepto ho ng isang sovereign wealth fund, dahil sa laki ho nila, no, makakakuha sila ng mas magandang deal dahil malaki ho sila. At pangalawa, ay makaka-invest ho sila sa mga sektor na hindi kaya po mag-invest yung mga bangko. Kasi yung Development Bank, DBP at Land Bank, mga bangko ito, so pautang lang. Ang Maharlika, pwede ho silang bumili ng equity. No? So pwede nilang gawin ito nang hindi ho nagagawa ng mga development banks.
Malinaw naman po yun, Mr. President. Ngunit ang sinasabi ko, halimbawa, kung walang Maharlika Investment Fund, nanatili yun doon sa mga traditional na bangko na sila po ang naglalatag ng mga development funds para paunlarin ang ating ekonomiya, mas nagampanan kaya nila yung ginawa nila kung ikukumpara sa output ngayon ng Maharlika Investment Fund na wala pa po tayo talagang makitang quantifiable na benefit sa ating ekonomiya. Halimbawa, itatanong natin, ilang porsyento ng public o ng private, ng poverty incidence rate ang na-reduce dahil nga ipinasok natin ang Maharlika Investment Fund? Meron ba tayong mga detalye masasabi ngayon? Kasi napaka-importante nun. 250 billion pesos. In-expect ng bawat isang Pilipino na nung ginawa natin yon, merong balik sa atin. 2 taon na ang nakararaan. Paano kung iniwan natin sa 2 bangko? Baka naman, mas lalong nagamit ng bangko. Yan po yung aking gusto sabihin.
But, Mr. President, ang bangko kasi may mga bagay na hindi nila kayang gawin, like mag-invest po in equity, Mr. President. And then number 2, Mr. President, kung iiwan ho natin to sa bangko, ang kanilang pwedeng gawin, magpautang o mag-invest sa government securities dahil ho hindi sila pwedeng mag-invest sa mga kumpanya, Mr. President. So, ako naman, Mr. President, ang pananaw ko ho dito dahil alam ko na nag-iingat rin ang Maharlika sa pag-i-invest. No? At sinusigurado nila yung, kasi the twin mandate eh. No? First is national development, second, returns. No? So talagang pinipili nila yung industriya na papasukin nila o pag-i-investan nila para masigurado nila na itong twin objectives ay ma-reach ho nila. Pero tama ho kayo na dapat rin na magkaroon ng oversight para makita natin kung talagang productive ba itong Maharlika Investment Fund at kung talagang nagagampanan ho nila yung kanilang mandato or objectives.
Isa sa kanyang mandato is national development. Kaya nga po tinatanong natin, if we can exemplify yung investment niya na 20% stake sa National Grid Corporation of the Philippines, ilang employment po na-create niya?
Itong investment po sa National Grid, sa aking opinion, Mr. President, is both a national security plus national development objective dahil kailangan ho naman talaga natin ng mata at tenga sa loob ng National Grid dahil natural monopoly ho ito.
Hindi po maintindihan ng tao yun eh. Sasabihin natin sa kanya, national security. Pero wala po kaming trabaho eh. Ganun po maintindihan kasi ng karaniwang mamamayan. Kaya ako po sana, ipinipilit man lang, kahit pa paano meron silang maibigay na naging bahagi na ng investment na yon, na i-contribute nila sa national development.
Yeah.
In tangible terms, kitang-kita natin Kasi po, ang ating pinagsisilbihan, mamamayan mahihirapan sila na intindihin under the context of national security, hindi po niya mapoprocess yun.
Kita ko
Sir
naman ho,
President.
pag nag-invest rin ho sila sa national grid, at mag-expand po yung national, pwede na ho nilang itulak yung expansion ng mga transmission lines ho natin. Kasi kung matatandaan ho natin, napakadami pong delayed transmission lines dahil sa management ng national grid. So ngayon dahil meron ng equity po ang gobyerno, pwede na rin nila itulak yung expansion ng transmission lines at doon na ho natin makikita yung construction activities, expansion activities, may mga trabaho na malilikha rin po nitong mga construction activities. Pero tama ho kayo, kailangan ho talaga ng oversight dahil dapat singilin ho natin sila. Lalo na pagdating ng 2026 dahil 3 taon na isingilin ho natin sila kung ano ba yung kanilang na-contribute sa ating bansa.
Tama po, Mr. President, kasi 250 billion pesos. 2 taon na po nakararaan. Ang balita ko po, yung mga opisyalis nito ay napakalalaki ng mga sweldo. Kailangan po ay masulit natin. Sapagkat napakalaki ng kanilang mga monthly salaries. Nabigla nga po ako ayoko na sabihin dito Siguro naman ay makapagdetalye sila. Sapagkat ito pong perang ito ay pera ng ating mga mamamayan. Sila'y naniniwala na kailangan maipaliwanag natin sa kanila, saan nyo dinala yung pera? Ito ba'y nakabahagi ba kami? Sa anong paraan kami nakabahagi? Yun po yung mga tanong na gusto nila na mabigyan ng konting o kaukulang sagot, Mr. President.
Si Secretary Recto po ang ex-officio chairman ng Maharlika Investment Fund at nakikinig ho siya na sinisingil na ho siya ng Senado at ni Senator Marcoleta kung ano na po ang contribution ng Maharlika Investment Fund sa ating bansa.
Ang sinisingil ko po, Mr. President, yung CEO, hindi po yung chairman.
Well, yung management, the board and the management,
Opo.
Mr. President.
Pupunta na po ako to sa sinasabi ko kanina na ako po natuwa nung briefing po ng DBCC ata noon, kasama po yung DBM, ang DOF, na kung saan ay bahagi ko, Mr. President, yung balakin ng representasyong ito na yun pong mga ayuda na pinamimigay natin, sari-sari po yun. May AKAP, may AIX, may TUPAD, may MAIP, may kung ano-ano. Nakwenta namin ni Secretary Recto 194 billion pesos for 2025. Hindi naman natin masyadong mapiho kung talagang yun ang naibigay talaga sa kinauukulan. May record, ngunit talagang hindi natin matukoy talaga ano ang ibinunga sa mga nakatanggap kung ilan man. Kaya naimungkahi ko po na in-index ko na lamang po sa sa paggamit ng elektrisidad Doon nga sa bill ko, sabi ko kung ang isang tao ay if a household consumes let's say 200 kilowatt hours per month, yun po i-subsidy na natin yun, libre na natin yun. Ang mabe-benefit po nun ay about 5.5 million households, approximately 25 to 27 million poor Filipinos. Ako po natuwa sa Secretary Recto, sinuportahan niya po yun. Sabi nga niya, dadagdagan pa natin yan. Ang pangalawa po, Mr. President, ay minungkahi po namin na tanggalin na rin natin yung 12% VAT sa sale ng electricity. Mr. President, ako po ay gumawa ng isang madali ang pag-aaral. Tinangka ko pong hanapin kung merong correlation po yung gross value added ng manufacturing at saka yung taxes on production on imports and taxes on income and wealth. Pero dito, ang sinasabi ko lang po, yung 12% VAT sa electricity. At ano naman po ang correlation niya sa export ng ating bansa. lumilitaw po merong positive correlation. Ang ibig sabihin po, pag na-reduce pala yung VAT, ang pinilalaban ko lang mo, initially po ay sa elektrisidad lang. At kung sakali naman ay may baba pa rin natin sa iba-ibang mga sektor, ang una po palang makikinabang dito ay mabuboost natin yung foreign direct investment. Siguro napakarami ang pupuntang investor sa atin. At pati manufacturing sector na ngayon po ay lethargic. Alam naman po natin. Ang ating economy po, Mr. President, is a consumption-driven economy. Kapag ang manufacturing po ay napasigla natin, baka yung pong pinapangarap nating 7.5% to hit the GDP target of 30 trillion, baka po maging times 3 pa yun. Dadami po yung negosyo na pupunta sa ating bansa. Yung mga negosyong maliliit, bababa ang production cost. May kinalaman po kasi yun, Mr. President, doon sa declared policy po ng batas. Halimbawa po yung Section 2, Paragraph C ng IPIRA, sabi niya, to ensure transparent and reasonable prices of electricity in a regime of free and fair competition and full public accountability in order to achieve greater operational and economic efficiency, to enhance the productivity or the competitiveness of Philippine products in the global market. Ano pong ibig sabihin nun? It promises the competitiveness of our Philippine products. So, lalaki po ang export talaga eh. The economic efficiency. Sinasabi po talaga eh. Ito yung declared policy ng batas eh. Kung sakali po na pag-isipan natin, halimbawa, nandiyan naman ang DepDep. Bakit po hindi natin aralin na kapag binaba pala natin, umpisan lang natin ang elektrisidad, dahil po, yung IPIRA, tingnan po natin ang kanyang original version. Wala pong VAT eh. Bakit po walang VAT, Mr. President? Kasi nakalagay doon, affordable, reasonable, competitive. Pagka nilagyan po ninyo ng VAT, tataliwas po yun doon sa pinapangarap ng batas. Magiging mataas ang presyo niya. So, Mr. President, kailangan po nating sundan yung layunin ng batas. Affordable, competitive, reasonable, fair. Ayun po yung sinasabi. Sa Tagalog po, mura. Kaya ko po naimungkahe na Secretary Recto, tanggalin natin yung 12% VAT sa sale ng electricity. At tingnan po natin kung ano magiging epekto nun. Sa aking palagay po, because I found correlation between reduced taxes at sa paglaki po ng gross value added ng manufacturing. Ang manufacturing po ang kailangan nating pasiglahin. Ito po from several decades now, ito po yung lethargic, ito po yung dormant, ito po yung nasa doldrums talaga. At kung ito po ay mapasigla natin, marami pong trabaho makikreate, maraming negosyong tatayo. And we will arm our people with increased purchasing power. Lalaki po yung kanilang personal disposable income. Marami silang mabibili. Lalaki po ang sales ng lahat na mga gustong magtinda. And this is understandable. Why don't we look at this scenario, Mr. President?
Mr. President, ang estimate na mawawala sa collection natin is about 45 billion pesos. Pero naiintindihan ko po yung punto ng ating kasamahan si Senator Marcoleta na pwede naman ho ito ipalit dahil mumura yung kuryente, dadami yung industriya. Pag dumami yung industriya, dadami yung trabaho, maraming magbabayad ng income tax.
Yes, Mr. President. Baka ang mangyari, mapapalitan naman ng 450 billion pesos. So nawalan kayo ng 45 billion pesos, nadagdagan tayo ng 450 billion pesos.
ito ho kasi magkakaroon ho ng impact sa ating collection dahil ngayon meron na ho tayong deficit of about 1.6 trillion pesos. So, in other words ho, kung mababawasan po yung kita ng gobyerno ng 45 billion, tataas ho ang ating deficit. No?
Ganito po kasi, doon sa isang mungkahi namin, tatanggalin natin ang ayuda, 194 billion ang aalisin natin, isa-subsidize natin yung gumagasa ng 200 kilowatt hours. 90 billion lamang po yun, estimate. So nakatipid na po tayo ron ng halos 120 billion pesos. Depende lamang po sa diskarte natin eh. Siguro po, kailangan lang nating pag-aralan lang.
Pag-aralan, tingin ko, pag-aralan. Nakukuha ko po yung punto at talagang, to be honest, Senator Marcoleta, marami talaga mga industriya dumadaing sa mahal po ng ating kuryente. In fact, madalas nga ho, sa mga negosyanteng kausap po, ang mukhang bibig nila parang nagtatrabaho sila para sa Meralco, hindi ho sa kanila dahil nga puro kuryente yung binabayad nila. Pero dapat ho balansehin rin sa koleksyon dahil marami rin pangangailangan ang gobyerno. So, dito po ang DOF, pag-aaralan nila itong konsepto na ito. Yung dalawang konsepto na ibinigay nyo po, yung alisin yung 12% VAT on buong electricity chain at pangalawa po yung tanggalin yung imbes na magbigay ng ayuda, ipasok nilang o ibigay nilang doon po sa lifeline rate.
Tama po, kasi po yung lifeline rate natin ngayon, Mr. President, ang 100% na libre lang, 20 kilowatt hours.
So,
Kaya gawin
tataasan.
lang nating 200.
Gawing 200. Ang average consumption ng ordinaryong pamilya is 200 po eh.
Opo.
200. So, pag-aralan ho ng pag-aaralan po kung yan po ay...
Ang isa pa pong example, Mr. President, tingnan po niyo ating cement industry. 70% po ng kanyang production cost, elektrisidad. Kaya po nakakaawa po yung estado ng ating cement industry. Hindi po sila pwedeng mag-compete, lalo na sa Vietnam. Kaya ngayon po nagagalit na po yung ibang mas mura po talaga yung Vietnam eh. Alam po niyo, Mr. President, yung sinasabi ko po kaninang correlation, nakakuha po ko ng time series from 2000 to 2024. Kaya 24 years po pinag-uusapan natin dito eh. Hinahanapan ko po ng correlation ang gross value added ng manufacturing, yung taxes at saka yung exports. Ibibigay ko po sa inyo ito para maaari po niyo tingnan, maaaring nagkamali po ako. Kung ako po ay nagkamali, ay gusto ko naman pong i-correct ninyo ako. Ngayon, kung meron naman pong konting may tutulong, baka sakali po. Sapagkat ito po ay halos 25 years po na time series po ito.
Maganda ho yan dahil as a basic concept talagang yan po ang daing ng mga negosyante ho natin. Mahal po ang presyo ng kuryente ho sa atin. Kaya maraming salamat, Senator Marcoleta, at nag-iisip ho kayo ng mga paraan para mapababa po yung presyo ng kuryente ho natin. Yan rin po yung yan din po yung aking pakay nung tayo po chairman ng Energy Committee, mapababa yung presyo ng kuryente.
May we know may we know from the distinguished gentleman from Tarlac, Senator Marcoleta, if he will be continuing? Will there be a second round, or you were about to terminate your interpellation?
Tapos na po ako, Mr. President.
Alright,
Maraming
thank you.
salamat po.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Senator Marcoleta. Maraming
Because
salamat.
with great sorrow, we would like to inform everyone that our beloved colleague, mentor, friend, Senate President Juan Ponce Enrile has joined our creator this afternoon, just a few minutes ago. So, well, he has decided, he has dedicated his whole life, even until his last days, to public service, and we will remember him for his formidable intellect and compassion to the people, especially the employees of the Senate. So as we mourn his passing, we find comfort in knowing that the legacy of Manong Johnny will always live on, etched within the walls of this institution that he loved, and his service to the nation will be forever etched in the hearts of many Filipino. And Majority Leader, what is the tradition
Mr. President, I also wish to express my sincere condolences to the Enrile family. I had the opportunity to be his majority floor leader in the 14th Congress. And so we could never forget his tireless efforts to always keep the image of the Senate at the level of statesmen and women. And we learned so much from the good gentleman from Cagayan. As a matter of fact, when he would speak to us, Mr. President, we were always at awe with his legal mind and this vast experience and knowledge of law and most of the statutes that we would be discussing on the floor. As a matter of fact, I could fondly remember him saying that whenever we discussed an old law, sabi niya, alam ko yun kasi I was a co-author of that law in 1970s or 60s. So, ganun ang stock knowledge, Mr. President. Mr. President, the traditions, and historical tradition of the Senate is if our colleague passes away, particularly this time it's a former Senate President, we usually adjourn session and then resume the following day to give honor to our colleague who led the Senate for many years and well loved by our staff and members of the Secretariat. So that's the tradition, Mr. President.
Yes, will it be acceptable to our colleagues if instead of an adjournment, we will be suspending the session until Monday instead of an adjournment? Because if we do so, then the continuation of the
Yes.
budget deliberations might
That would
might
be
be
my
hampered.
motion, Mr. President, just to suspend.
I'm sure Manong Johnny, if he were here, would have accepted and agreed.
Knowing him, Mr. President, he probably is here with us today. Because I'm sure one thing that he's fond of in his memories is the memories of being in this August chamber, Mr. President. So, with the permission of the body, and I believe that nobody will object to this, is that we just invite back, before we suspend, we invite back the different agencies to come back on Monday, 1 p.m.
Yes, the continuation of this, the agencies concerned will be on Monday at 1 p.m.
That's correct,
All
Your
right.
Honor.
Is that, so you are putting it into a
Yes,
motion?
I'm putting it to a motion, Mr. President. I move to suspend session until Monday, November 17, 2025. I so move.
All right, following tradition, the Senate is hereby,
At 1
the
o'clock, Mr.
session
President.
of the session is hereby suspended until 1 o'clock in the afternoon of Monday, November 17, 2025.
The countdown is on. Everything you need to get the edge at the end of the market day. This is the close.
The risk-on rally, well, it morphs into a risk-on rotation. Live from Studio 2 here at Bloomberg headquarters in New York, I'm Romaine Bostic.
And I'm Katie Greifeld. We're kicking you off to the closing bell here in the U.S. Let's take a look at this rotation. Certainly a rotation out of tech stocks. The NASDAQ 100 down by about 0.2%. The S&P 500 pretty much unchanged. It was higher earlier in the session, but giving up some of those gains. Rotating into bonds. You can see the 10-year Treasury yield lower by about 5 basis points right now. We're still above 4%, but we'll see if this gains more steam. And I also wanted to highlight Bitcoin here. It sort of wraps into the risk profile of this market. Bitcoin down about 1.3% at the moment, Romaine.
Yeah, and we talk about that rotation, the rotation that we saw yesterday out of technology and into some of the lagging pockets of the market, like healthcare, that continuing here on the second day. Lilly, AbbVie, Elevance among the notable gainers, while high valuation tech stocks like your Metas, your Nvidias, your Palantirs seeing some profit taking from the recent record runs. And that might actually be a reflection of what's going on in Washington, the potential for the end of the government shutdown, and of course the government economic data pipeline turning back on. Across the last 20 shutdowns going back to 1976, the S&P has averaged gains of 1.2 and 2.9% in the 1 and 3 month periods following a budget resolution, with pointed gains particularly in the stocks of companies that sell consumer goods and services. So keep an eye on those. Now, that doesn't mean that the tech trade itself is tamped down altogether. You take a look at AMD, the nearest rival to NVIDIA in the AI chips race, jumping as much as 11% after predicting a path to more than $100 billion in data center revenue by 2030. That forecast coming as Anthropic, for the first time ever, said it would take on directly its first major data center build-out, a $50 billion project that suggests, Katie Greifeld, the AI spend is far from petering out.
Well, speaking of AI spend, let's put that into context. It's all we've been talking about this past earnings season. You have behind me a chart of estimated net CapEx. That is, of course, CapEx spend versus depreciation. We're looking specifically for S&P 500 firms estimated to hit $100 billion for the first time ever in the third quarter. And I thought this waterfall was really interesting because you can see how this spend has been building and building. We had, of course, been nearing levels that we reached maybe a decade ago, but certainly in the past few quarters remain, you can see we've burst right through that. So really, we're looking at records here when it comes to spend. We already knew that, but taking a look at it in context certainly speaks to the anxiety in the market right now that maybe we're not going to see the return on investment that would justify some of these levels.
All right, well, let's get some more context as we kick you off to the close here on this Wednesday afternoon. Luke Barr is